Good morning, everyone. Microphone check. Screen check. Looks like everything is working correctly here. Good, good. I had Windows decide to throw an update at me last night, so I'm double checking all the settings, so it looks like everything is working correctly. You never know after those things. I think we're all right. All right, wonderful. As per the usual, before we jump on the left side of the screen there, very important to read through the live trading morning prep PDF. Very important to go through and understand everything that is inside of there. If you aren't a member of SSFTG or a part of the YouTube family, check out the join button below the stream to gain access before the next private webinar, get access to the Discord chat, not to mention the awesome badge next to your YouTube name to show your support and all the other awesome things that come with it. If you're trying to figure out what it is exactly that we're doing here, look no further than the Day Trading Academy over on SSFTG. Not including the live streams and YouTube tutorials and everything else that we've got going on, the Day Trading Academy comes with 19 plus hours of material loaded for you, and that collection continues to grow. Please keep in mind that the YouTube broadcast does have between a 3 to 30 second delay, but if you want to level up to the VIP status, you can enjoy exclusive permanent access to our non-delayed live analysis stream via Zoom direct meetings, as well as monthly VIP webinars, private VIP events, one-on-one scheduling access, the list goes on, and that one is also continuously growing. So whether you're new here or you're a veteran over on the VIP stream, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here with me today. Let's take a look at some charts, take a look at some news, see what's going on for today, and then we can jump in and take a deep dive as to what all is happening so far. Don't forget, along the way, grab your morning DP levels. Those are posted for you there this morning on the major markets that we take a look at here. First up on the news calendar, taking a look at what's happening so far this morning. Earlier this morning, there was just some medium to small news announcements. Not a big deal. There's not really a whole lot going on there. It's Wednesday, so we do have crude oil inventories today. That's forecasted at negative 2.889 million. We'll take a look at the API report from yesterday, and that will give us a better idea as to what to expect. That came out at a negative 3.6. So when we line those two up, when they're both anticipating very similar results, it's very likely that they're going to come out right around that area, negative 2, negative 3, maybe plus or minus a little bit, but it's probably going to be around that area. Now, that's important because if it doesn't come out that way, you can kind of gauge what direction the surprise will go in. Usually. But again, price action does whatever it wants to do. It's just kind of more of a clue beforehand. At the moment, it looks like crude oil has some bullish numbers that are kind of backing it for now. We'll see. 12 o'clock noon, we've got Fed Chair Powell speaking, and that's it. We've got a bunch of FOMC members speaking later this afternoon and this evening, even a little bit, but not much else. So the news calendar is pretty calm, pretty light. Not a whole lot to have to worry about on that side. Take a look at the NASDAQ so far this morning, see what's going on. Or, I guess in this case, not going on. The overall move, I mean, man, this thing just, it doesn't pull back. When we zoom out, the last decent pullback it had was on the 30th. That's it. I mean, again, I know we keep going back to these lows down here, but we had that fantastic rotation off the low, L4. Pop back up, gave us an L3, L2, L3, starting to hold a lot of support, higher up, gaining, breakout to the upside. Now they're holding L1s, 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 not even pulling back to L1, not even close. Rallying higher, they breathe the same air as the L1 and that thing is gone. We just have not had a single pullback yet. So given that the market is incredibly lofty, way up in the stratosphere, it's obviously overextended. But at the same time, who in their right mind is going to short this thing? Notably, where are we? We hit 14K. Woo! NASDAQ, 14,000. They hit it. Big objective getting taken out. I can't believe we're trading at 14,000 on the NASDAQ. That's insane. Well, I mean, here we are, If we look at the volume from the move down all the way up, we kind of gauge what's going on here in terms of the volume profile. This does have a pretty gnarly undertow working its way down there. A lot of support down at the lows. We already talked about that. Then we have that POC shift. That's a pretty big clue. A POC shift up to 13,785. Now the market breaking back above it. I mean, we can see how they played off of it. Right? We know that level was there. We were talking about how yesterday, if they're going to take it lower, they have to get under it. They couldn't. They failed. Rotation all the way back up. So with this strong rotation higher, what are we seeing in volume so far? So far, after the POC shift, we have declining volume, which would be more suggestive of profit taking once again. We've got the breakout move. We've got all-time highs. We've got big psychological levels like 14K. There's going to be some profit taking up here. Not a surprise. So far, though, we have not seen any shift or any POC adjustment or anything like that since that adjustment at 785, and those sellers are still assumably stuck. Along with the rest of the shorts if they've been trying to hold on to this thing. Eventually, we will get a pullback because it always happens. And a lot of times, those big aggressive pullbacks, they come back to fill in a lot of those voids in volume that they left behind in the earlier breakouts. So stop runs. Big VVP resting right here. Why do you think there's a VVP there? It's a stop run. They broke above the highs. And it went rallying back above the top. They didn't have enough time to trade volume there because there were too many stop orders. It shoved it through. Excuse me. And that creates a cascade all the way back up to all-time highs, and they get 14K. But if we look backward, there's another big one over here. Obviously, another stop run location. If we go backward, there's a big one right there, which again is a very obvious stop location. If we go back behind that, that's another very obvious stop location breaking above that high. Again, go back. We can see it's a very obvious stop location. It's just been stop blow-offs over and over and over and over again, and none of these shorts have had a chance to get out. And that's really good information because we know that when the pullback does eventually happen, it's very likely going to be extremely defended. So that gives a lot of bias to the bulls. Just at the moment, we don't have any pull. It can't even pull back to an L1 yet. So I guess we got to give it some time. Hang on one second. Get my drink. There we go. All right. S&P continuing its rally back to the upside here as well. Obviously not as strong as the NASDAQ, but I mean, the S&P has already been strong. You know, that's kind of the thing. It doesn't have to play catch up because it hasn't. It looks even stronger than the NASDAQ. I mean, there's been not even like halfway to the L1. There hasn't even been a pullback to the L1. The NASDAQ at least had one of them. There's just straight up. That's not typical for the S&P. The S&P is a typical deep pullback kind of market. They pull back 50, 60%. That's kind of the norm for it, you know. So given that we've got this just extremely bullish trend to the upside, we're breaking above 4,000 by a long shot. We left that thing in the dust. There is obviously a brick wall. That might have been a big limit order, some massive profit taking, whatever, but there was a big order or something there that we had broken above, and since then, it's just not stopped going higher. Again, eventually there will be a pullback, and when it comes, it'll probably backfill a lot of those VVPs and a lot of those volume voids. If we look back on the order profile here, that'll give us an idea of where those are. And again, we can kind of gauge from a psychological perspective, do they make sense? You know, is it at a major swing high? Is it at a major swing low? What the heck? Okay. I don't know what happened there. Something's not quite right. Okay. That's a new one. That's about the best void you can get, right? I mean, that's about as obvious as, Jeez, oh Pete. Obviously, there's some data problems here. But we can see that there was initially accumulation volume. Unfortunately, I think due to Easter being in the middle, I can't see what happened on that day. I don't know if it's just a data problem or what, but there was some pretty obvious breakout movement to the upside, and that's where that big wall was. Once they broke out above it, big POC shift, 4,067. Again, accumulation. But the price still keeps breaking above it. Every time they shift the volume node higher, it just goes higher again. So anywhere that the shorts are stuck in, I can't say, I mean, it looks like a giant void, but if we go underneath that, there's a nice one sitting right there. If we go back Does it make any sense as to where that was? Yeah, that was above those double top highs. But the problem is, this one's already been kind of retested, right? That one's sort of done. I have less emphasis on that one. If we go back over here, though, very obvious breakout above those previous swings, and the market never came back. So this one's pretty nice. It's really far down there, but it's pretty nice. If we go over here and look at the next one, again, they broke out, never came back. For higher low buyers, that's a great spot back in the 4,035s-ish. Go back again, another very obvious breakout point, but they've held nicely there. And now the more recent one, which has already been retested. So the only viable VVPs, obviously aside from the data problem here, are a little bit lower on the S&P. A bit lofty here. Over on gold, pulling back nicely out of this funky looking flag thing that they've got going on. Attempting to break underneath the lows. This could just be a washout before buyers take it back up. This could also be the start of a big failure, and we see a spike, and it tried to get the flag going, right? It tried getting something going, but it ends up being a spike, ledge, and failure all the way back down. That's the concern right now. If we look at the volume, why would the market be all of a sudden just stopping dead in its tracks after such a strong rally up? Let's look back at volume. Off the top to the bottom. Let's see if anything lines up in this area. Sure enough, giant VVP in this zone. I'm back. Sorry about that. So there's, there's some pretty obvious void filling going on here. Now, this is only the volume before this drop. Let's go a little further forward. I think volume is being weird down here. Yeah, jump back up again. So I don't know what's happening to my data today, but if we project that forward, then now we can see what did they do in this area? Well, you tell me, right? It's pretty obvious. They built up volume where there was a void before. Now we've got an accumulation phase. If this starts failing lower, that's a big problem for buyers. They tried getting it going, but they totally lost their grip. And this was their chance to try to rotate it higher. They're running out of time really fast. And now price is staying below the VVP on the entire move. They've obviously got some issues here. Now, in the bigger picture, this is more of a testament of just looking for a bigger pullback. But in the shorter term, they've got some problems. Over on crude oil, we already know that the news is anticipated to be bullish. But so far, it's been going up pretty nicely. The MACD is dead flat. We got to get a little closer here. Still nothing. Just kind of grinding its way up. Channeling. Markets channeling. Nothing really out of the ordinary. In terms of areas of interest, it looks very obvious like we had a wedge that held or attempted to hold. They broke out of, and that breakout they tried getting the breakout above. They made it look like it was failing. Sellers got suckered in at the low just to see it rip their face off back to the upside. So it's a wedge breakout in an incredibly vindictive way. If we narrow this into the next high, we can see even more. Traders trying to hold these wedges. They're also getting just kind of slammed on. So now it's starting to gear up where, hey, maybe we're dealing with a bit more of a bullish type of sentiment. Honestly, this looks more like a midline, if anything, in a wider channel that would be up here. So that seems to be like the best fit at the moment. Of course, you could also just take over the more recent few days and narrow it in. But again, these weird V-top, V-bottom things are throwing these channels all over the place. You can see here, narrower, it's also a multi-tiered channel. So you've got a few things to work with here on crude. Unfortunately, it's at the top of most of them. On the euro, coming off the top of the megaphone, finding some rejection off of that area as well with a very obvious undertow going directly into the highs. I mean, it's, geez, this thing is a spike in a spike in channel by pure definition and strength. This thing is insane. So incredible bullish move to the upside. And a lot of times when you have those spike in channels, the first breakout, when it does eventually pull back, usually goes to the beginning of where it all started, right? At the beginning of the channel. We haven't had that yet. That'd be back at 1.194. And that big psychological 1.2, it's right around the corner. These markets are, man, they're jumping and really taking out those big psych levels too. So, you know, just keep an eye. Bitcoin, we've got the nice channel to the upside. Kind of curious to see how they want to respond to this, because you can also see that this is a almost perfect spike in channel, and they haven't really made it up to the highs, but maybe it's also a megaphone. The top is a little bit wishy-washy. The bottom is showing some really good support. So it seems like buyers are still very aggressively buying. They're just not quite sure where the top is yet, which makes sense. You're at all-time highs. It's all projecting anyway. There are some concerns. We've got some divergences coming off the highs. No undertowing in the sense of continued divergences, but I mean, we're at the top of the channel. We're at all-time highs. We're hitting some pretty big things going on here, and we're seeing divergences off the top. I mean, you know, it's, I think, a pretty big clue. Now, the fact that the market's not pulling back could be a sign of incredible strength, too. So if we keep breaking out of the highs, 60,000, you know, 65,000, 66, this thing could be up to 90 before we know it. So, I mean, strap in. This thing might go crazy. Over on Ethereum, obviously Ethereum has a bunch of stuff going on with their hard fork and all of that fun stuff, but so far they're holding up pretty well. We had a quick little flash pullback this morning, and it bounced right back up again. No surprise. Buyers are just gobbling every pullback they can get up. There obviously are some double topping going on with the MACD in the sense of, you know, maybe this trend is starting to run out of steam. But again, as we know with the MACD in general, you can draw these up with patterning, and so far they're kind of at the lowest support. So, I mean, if they do jerk back up again, we could see this thing go really crazy. It's got the shot. Ugh, my cat's getting into trouble. Hang on. I don't know where he is. He's digging into a box somewhere. Gold's getting crushed right now. What's your opinion on the Coinbase listing? Man, it's tough. You know, there's never been anything like it. Is that a good thing? Maybe. You know, going backward in history, because I know you've been around for a while. You know my opinion on Coinbase. I'm not a big fan of Coinbase. I don't like it, but it's one of those necessary evils. You know, it's the first one to really kind of bring regulation to the party in a sense. I don't like it. I don't like anything about the company, but like I said, it's a necessary evil, and I think it has to succeed in order for crypto to succeed. Other companies are also making very large strides. Do I think Coinbase is the only one? Absolutely not. They're just the only one that's listed. If we see something like Binance or something like that, guess where everybody's money is going to go, right? They're already working on tokenized stock trading. You know, they're making Coinbase did all the legwork, right? They got all the regulation stuff out of the way, but now everybody else is just passing them. So I think it's incredibly overvalued, but that hasn't stopped. I mean, look at the NASDAQ, right? There's been no pullback. So overvalued is irrelevant right now. So, I mean, on typical overvaluation launches, right, expect it to open up super high. Expect the first initial break. I mean, you know how I like approaching IPOs. There's a video on YouTube that goes over it too. But this would be one where I would want to try to, like, you know, if I were looking at it in the long term, any long trades that I were taking, because that's all you can do in IPOs. Well, unless you have CFDs and stuff. I don't. But you know, those are ones that you would get in with, like, 1,000 shares with the intention of holding 100 of them and only, scalping out of 900 of them or something like that. You get the idea. Where the trade sort of pays for itself to hold on to the shares. That's how I like approaching IPOs, if they're ones that I want to hold on to. But if it goes screaming higher, is there anything that, is going to stop it? No. I mean, the hype train is strong. Just be careful when the fear train steps up. Looking at the overnight session, obviously we had that beautiful rally back to the upside. And if you remember, we were talking yesterday on buying into that L2 dip. We finally got, they juked me out of this one, but we finally got that pullback into that deep L2. They fiddled with this area forever. If you remember, they came really close here. And the zone, let's see, where are my original entries? Right around there. The zone was like right there. And they just missed it. Tried going higher, couldn't quite get it done. Rolled back down, just missed it, couldn't get it done, and then flushed underneath it, and then support, the whole way back up into the overnight session with a monster continuation. So they finally did get that dip. It just took them forever. The Asian session has accomplished essentially nothing. They made it not even a half deviation above the highs, and not even a half deviation below the lows before they went into the European session. So kind of a non-event Asian session there. Going into the Euro session, we do have a little over a half deviation up and a pretty deep pullback. If we look at this from a structural perspective of just today, because so far, I mean, really, it's just a swing low and it's been going up. Got a nice rotation off L4. That's what a lot of buyers need to see. L4s with strength will usually continue off L1s, sometimes two. This one held off an L1. Good strength again. Cool. More movement further up. Perpetual L1s. Eventually, there will be a pullback because there always is. Typically, buyers are going to be looking to defend on an L2. If the L1 is the highest and that starts breaking, then they're usually going to try to go to the next one or maybe the one underneath that. Depends on context, obviously. In this case, we see buyers stepped up in the L1 since also previous swing high. Beautiful bounce. And then just rip their face off. There's no remorse. Completely annihilated it. The bottom of the L1, gone. Nothing. The top of the L2, nothing. The bottom of the L2 had enough of a bounce to allow the tops to get out. But these traders at the bottom of the L1 are still stuck. So that's the area of interest that I'm paying attention to if the market returns back up to these highs and it starts stalling. Notably, the L3 buyers have also just been given a chance to get out, and we're now starting to dip back to the larger swing area for buyers on the deeper dip, going into the open. But buyers will be looking for these L4, L5s with small stops and targets way back up at the top again. So we've definitely got some zones of interest. Monstrous pullback on the MACD. So kind of curious to see if this is a reload dip, if this is a break even, sort of what is anticipated to come from this. And a lot of that information can be derived from the volume. So let's look at the leg to the upside. No, geez, they didn't do anything in the pre-market. Like all of this back and forth, and there's like no volume. I mean, minuscule little bumps, but not a whole lot of anything until we made it up to 14K, which I guess makes sense. What a shock. The POC's at 14,000. Who would have thought? It's predictable to the T. The POC lands at 14,000 exactly, and the market breaks up. We obviously have a nice stop run above the highs. They came back and retested. We have another break above the highs. They came back, retested, and actually failed and started rotating down. So if the market's pulling back, where is it going to want to pull back to? The largest void. Well, the largest void really was below 14K. That's down here. But this whole area is gross, right? There's no volume. So, I mean, do we really want to say this whole thing is a void? Or it makes it a little bit awkward. So I think that means in this case, we're going to need a bit more info. We know that buyers will be coming in on the support zone. We know that they're going to like the support zone for obvious reasons. Just zoom out. It keeps going up. But that said, we're hitting some big psych levels at 14K. That will mess with things. So let's make sure to get that highlighted. Looking at the bigger picture on the daily, we have made it with a rotation all the way to new all-time highs. That was a full rotation off the L3 after a nice two-legged correction down. We now have a big overextension up. So projecting forward, since obviously all-time highs are a little bit difficult, we have not even begun to pull back yet. So the next pullback, we can finally get rid of that drawing. That drawing's been on there for ages. But until we start pulling back, it doesn't really matter anymore. What is standing out the most is the fact that we have a really strong leg, a big pulse, and if you put these at measured legs, this one went about 1.5 the distance so far. A lot of times when you get that type of formation, the next pullback will come back to around the inside of that, and then push with the same distance of A. A being the first leg, A equals C in this case, to the upside. That is kind of what it looks like. So even if it does start pulling back all the way back down to like 13,400, 13,200, it's still incredibly bullish. Buyers are going to be all over it. So the daily is just screaming higher. There's only been one bear bar in this sequence up so far. Obviously, the first time we get a bear day or two is going to get accumulated. Looking at the 14,000 zone, pretty obvious twin reversal on the top with the 60-minute. That's a touch concerning, you know. I feel like that's fair to be concerned about that. You know, if we start getting more momentum to the downside and we start seeing some pretty heavy failure, 1 minute to the open, inside hold, inside resistance, that could cause that kind of multi-day pullback. Not out of the woods yet, that's for sure. What a move. See what they want to do at the open. Got about 30 seconds. Very close to settlement already. If we get a quick little flush down to settlement, that might be a nice little opportunity for buyers to try to buy. Again, that deep L4, L5 dip. Stock exchange open. Quick little pop up, then a quick pull back down again. A little bit, little jerky here. Nice slide further down. Low of the European sessions, a little bit further around the 68s. Dipping underneath settlement now. The MACD still has not even crossed higher. Nothing. It's just straight down. Back down to the European session lows. If buyers are going to be stepping up, I mean, this would be the value area that you would expect. But look at that 60-minute. I mean, that twin reversal off the top, that looks vicious. This could get nasty. Or it could be a total false alarm and ends up being a V-bottom. We know how the NASDAQ likes to roll. Nice pop off the lows so far. If we look at this overall move to the upside, a lot of times, if buyers are getting dumpstered the whole way down, if they are able to get a bounce before the break of the lows, you'll start seeing them exit around the L3s, that indecision point. So at the moment, the zone more so of interest than anything else would be L3 from the sell side, assuming it doesn't break the lows. If it breaks the lows, that's off. There's the low. All right. They couldn't even get that move. So now we have a full flip, total reversal back the other direction. Now, if we look at this volume from the top and then drive our way down, because now this is obviously the volume that we're going to have to work with. This is going to be a surprise leg, so it's no surprise to see volume being super erratic. They haven't had time to build. They were expecting a continuation move. We saw all of the clean volume on this move up. This move down, we're getting really jerky. There's a lot of volume coming in at the 960s, but so far, you know, it's a little bit kind of back and forth, a little bit confused, and that's because they... Oh my God, Ziggy, my cat. Well, you're driving me nuts. Is getting this pullback, and they haven't had a chance to really respond yet. So you can see how quickly volume is shifting now. Look how fast it's shifting hands. All of that volume just dumped at 959. Do you see it get out of the way? Watch the replay back if you can. Rewind a minute. But all of that volume, it broke underneath it, came back, hit it, and it just filled with resistance. Big move down. Potential very large failure below 14,000. Nice bounce back up. Watch this 959 area. That's the volume node. If sellers are going to hold it, we'll see a lot of volume start stacking up in that zone, and it might not stay there for very long. If it immediately rips through it, that's also a big clue. Popped above it. Right back down again. Okay, so sellers have a potential shot to try to hold this 959 volume for shorts to try to drive the market back down to lows. And this would be kind of like the first pullback the market's really had. Generally, with a first pullback, honestly, you'd really prefer to see like a two-legged correction. Where would you start scaling in for a swing? A swing in which direction? Shorts or longs? For longs. Down here would be a great initial point of interest, if you ask me. I mean, we're dipping underneath. We're seeing accumulation volume. We know this is a surprise leg down, so I don't necessarily want to be the first one to the party. I would rather see them, like we say, stick the knife in the floor, which I think we've had, obvious enough now at these lows at 943.25. So I think if anything, if it does dip down below that, buyers will be buying in underneath 43.25. You can also see there's a lot of volume shifting hands around this 59. That's a big fist fight down here. Look at it all. So buyers might already be in disallowing it getting down there, but a big point of interest is going to be a new low. There's that volume shoving back down again, that 59. Shorts are really trying to get it to push lower, but this is all accumulation volume. First five is behind us now, so let's take a look at what they were able to do on the first five. On the S&P, POC at 3150. On the NASDAQ, a big enough bear bar will get sellers involved trying to get this to push lower. The first five... Oh, jeez. Lovely. At 59. What a great spot for that. Jeez. It's the POC. The whole move down. It's also the first five. Sellers are trying to get that breakdown. We are breaking below, like we were talking about. This is expected to have two legs down. It's a surprise move. Buyers weren't expecting this to fail all the way through the bottom. We could tell that by the volume. It was super jerky. They didn't have a whole lot of time to build a POC down here, but with the time that they did have, they built it pretty quick. 13,959. Oh man, immediately rejected. Sellers will be looking for a bear bar continuation, looking for lower movement on that bear bar, and if it fails, that will equally be a big piece of information. From the bigger perspective, I like this a lot more for a long, which is why I'm staying away from the short. But so far, I haven't had a reason to go long. They can't even get back above volume. Well, kind of. Backfilling again, a lot of volume at 9:59. Look at this leg on the 15-minute. Jeez. Sellers are really trying to get this to churn lower. Nice bear bar. I don't want to go short. They're just not giving me a reason to go long. S&P on the side of things, while the Nasdaq's trying to make up its mind, is catching a nice lift to the upside. Kind of a little micro double top pre-market. Now, swing longs down here, I mean, we haven't gotten above that volume at 9:59, which is a bit of a bummer. But like call options, etc., those types of things that are a little bit less risky than like futures, as an example. Those are the types of longs that are building in down here right now. A strong bull bar back up, and that's not really what I wanted to see. And now a bear bar back down, that could potentially spell disaster for longs. I don't want to go short, but the longs continue to fail underneath that 9:59. The sellers can't plot a bear bar to save their life right now. Could you add a Coinbase chart somewhere? It would be nice to see what happens when they start trading. Yeah, for sure. Let me open... Whoop. Sorry. Let me open Thinkorswim real quick. A strong bear bar to the downside. That will get interest for sellers to try to drive this back down. It's another volume failure. Ooh, garbage bear bar. That was terrible. Okay, now they followed through. They have a little more proof. The next time it backs up, we'll likely have sellers underneath trying to re-enter because that first push down was just so bad looking. Now remember, swing long, accumulation longs, etc., they're buying down here, right? This is their zone of interest. Like, yes, finally, value. All right, hang on one second here. Got to give Thinkorswim a second to figure out what it's doing. All right, I think there's a way that you can. Oh my God, my cat, my effing cat, is out to kill me today. What are you doing? Jeez, don't sass me. Destroying my office. Sorry, hang on. Trying to deal with my murderous intent of a cat here. Detach. There we go. Yeah, hi. Stop. Don't make me get the water bottle. All right, I got the chart. We've got that low pressed in. Wow. They could not even break a new low. Hang on one second here. What is the... Let's get that out of the way. Pull that up. Oh, daily chart's not going to help anything. Let's do a 1 minute. All right. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. All right. I don't know when they're going to start trading, but I'll pop it up here. I think it's safe to put it around here. I don't think we're going to be pulling back to 13,600 today, so... Incredibly strong bullish response off of the lows for the S&P. So far, the NASDAQ has now broken back above. This is an incredibly bullish signal now that we've broken back above volume. 13,959 held again. Look at that zone of support. So swings in this area who are looking to try to build longs are going to be looking to try to build in this area, especially if they can get a dip back to those 959s. That higher low on the bottom was vicious. Sellers who are looking for short opportunities are going to be looking to attempt to rotate off the L1, but so far they're failing. Now they're getting back to L2. So 959 becomes a massive zone of interest. From a swing perspective, on a blind entry point at least, that would be something along the lines of this, which... Settlement is a little bit of a bummer, I gotta say. If we could get an optimized entry down here, that would put our targets inside of settlement for a 2-to-1. So I think this is more optimal, although less likely to get filled. That would be at 953 quarter. And that way, we could put stops underneath the low. And upside objectives would fit right there. So as far as the swing goes, from that perspective, longs will be looking to try to pick up a higher low, especially given the fact that the last one failed. Buyers may be coming in as early as 959, though. Oh, jeez. Big chunk of volume came back in there again. This would be a higher low rotation off of an L4, L5 with an optimized entry just to make sure that my target fits within settlement. And then if it wants to go further than that, you know, that's all hunky-dory. But this would be the area on the way down. Another way, potentially, to modify it so we can go for a little bit of a higher objective. The widest stop point, I mean, if it starts breaking below 28 quarter, then it's just obviously wrong. There's no getting around it at that point. L2, L1. So if I went off of that... I would need to optimize my entries a little bit further. There we go. There, 5175. There we go. That is the fully optimized as I can get an entry point at the top to try to rotate for an upside objective back to the highs. For the S&P, we've got 3 very nice bull bars back to the upside, and likely they're going to try to at least fill in some of that candle gapping. So with that candle gapping in mind, upside objectives are a little bit further up to 4140, at least for now. So as long as that candle gap remains open, buyers will be looking for continuation. 37 quarter, 1 point pullback would be 36 quarter. This market's so slow right now. Do I even want to play with a 1 point pullback? I'm going to go 2. Because that puts that right back into settlement and just makes a bit more sense to find support here. See if they're able to get that pullback or not. I mean, again, the S&P and the indexes as a whole, they're in a very nice bullish position to try to continue back up. The thing that I don't like about them is that they're forcing to buy relatively high. And I would just rather buy the pullback to volume, honestly. But again, you know, these near tests, that might just be good enough. I'm trying to optimize my entry to ensure that my target is in a logical range. And that might just mean that I get left in the dust. Price staying above volume so far. Seeing quite a bit of consolidation here. Pretty apparent that it's not ready to go yet. See if they're not ready to go yet because they want buyers down here. We've got the dip back to 959. So, again, this is the unfortunate side effect of optimizing entries to ensure that targets are in the right place. Sometimes it means that you miss the trade, but if it does go back up to new highs, I'm not interested in the line. I missed it at that point. Nice little inside bull bar on the S&P. Likely will find buyers underneath the low of that, 36.75, 35.75. 37.75 is the open of the current candle. It would be better to go for 50. 36.50 makes more sense. Nasdaq's getting close. First objective. Second objective is pretty close already. Next thing, though, if we can get this rotation back up, would be back up to 14K. The only thing that stands out that's fairly obvious about 14,000 is the fact that we've got this giant VVP ahead of it. So I still think it makes sense to try to target the 2-to-1s to the upside and just call it a day if it goes there. Well, that is one heck of a response. Jeez. Howdy doody, NASDAQ. Now keep it going. Golly gee willikers, Batman. Back to the Euro session lows. What an absolute screamer to the upside. Jeez. They're above European session lows. Haven't made it up to 2-to-1 yet. Now, obviously, depending on how many contracts people will have bought in that first pump higher, a lot of buyers will take profit on that. I think that's very fair to say. I'm still approaching this more from a swing perspective. If they start plotting, too many bear bars, though, the concern is that this is a break even that's starting to reverse back down. So that is a little bit of a concern. Remember, this 959 is the volume node. And a lot of times they'll come back and they'll mess around with break evens and kind of jerk them around a bit. But you can see a reason why some traders may choose to exit in favor of potentially even buying again on another dip. Quick little flush back to break even. The S&P is up at highs. Right back off break even again. Now, this 959 volume node, we need to see buyers step back above this, because if price starts breaking back below the 950 halves, we're not going to see buyers want to stick around for too long, right? Jeez, it's obviously incredibly sensitive down here. Lordy. Back up to the 959. Now, this is the volume node. They have to break through this area. Very nice bull bar to try to get the job done. Now, we know how the NASDAQ operates. How likely do you think it would be if the buyers don't get that move that they want, that they give up? It flushes underneath the low for like a millisecond and then goes screaming right back to the highs again. 959, they got to get above this volume. There they go. Well, momentarily. Closing above it. 959 volume acting as support again. $9.59 volumes starting to crack down a little bit. Bear bar, bulls buy it right back up. $9.59 hits again. You can see him messing with people. It's incredibly, every time it gets down here, it jerks right back up. So I'm not really afraid at all about the way that it's going. But the one thing that it does create is a lot of pent-up energy, where if it wants to crack above these highs and start gunning for beyond those 2-to-1s, we might be able to get that pump back up to 14K. But I do have to front run at 96.25, and I will be optimizing my stop along the way. If we break back above the highs at 71.75 and it can't fulfill at least the objective, I'm not willing to let it come back again. S&P is tagging a major candle gap objective. The S&P, I didn't get it on the S&P at 36.50. What a bummer. Really? All right. So the S&P hitting that major objective up there may actually cause some problems. We're back underneath volume. Big bear bar back down, too. Buyers need to see this respond aggressively. Nice bull bar. Man, what a fist fight. 959 is still the zone. Sellers couldn't get the job done. A little poke back to 959. You'll probably see a lot of buyers reload there, especially if it's a quick little washout move like that. But if it gets too strong and breaks back below it, then that could cause some problems too. Yep, there's that quick little washout move. So buyers did reload on the pullback. S&P breaking higher still. Come on, NASDAQ. I know it's not in your nature to not be vindictive, but, I mean... Back to Euro session lows. Bull bar closing back up. The NASDAQ's got to get everyone. It's not enough to just get some. It needs blood. That's the offering you must make. Beautiful continuation of the upside. Just need a little more. All right. The one I am 100% locking in. That is going to be one thing or the other. All right. Stopped out on that first one, on that quick little micro pullback ahead of the objective. I am no longer, absolutely not willing to let it come back and turn into a loss. That is a no thank you. Now do whatever you need to do, NASDAQ. Just not break even. Just not that. Up is fine. Oops. There we go. Incredible continuation off of that leg. Now we just got to see it go a little further. We still technically haven't achieved the 2-to-1 objective. I jumped ship a little bit early because there's obviously a lot of resistance here, which is why I'm also not willing to let it turn into a loss. And honestly, I don't even know that I'm willing to let it come all the way back down here. If they start failing below 59, I would rather jump ship in favor of just reloading if it gives me another reason to. But we're underneath that 59 point. Jeez. They've got to keep it going. That's the break point. Because if they hit underneath that, it's game over. I mean, unless buyers immediately sweep back in. And if we get a strong bull bar, that's the response. Stop taking out in the secondary portion. Although that does not mean that the longs are done. All right, starting to break through. Are they going to get the new leg? Yep. Push back to the downside again. Now longs, swing longs, etc., they are 100% still going to be buying into this low, right? But this is why I wasn't willing to wait and try to hold out and be like, oh, I'm going to stick to my rules and go for that 2-to-1. Sometimes you got to know when being a stickler is shooting yourself in the foot. This is one of those cases, right? I know my 2-to-1 is here. I did everything in my power to try to optimize my entry as best I could, and it still failed to get it. I'm not going to sit through another pullback, right? I'm going to make sure that at least something is at least safeguarded. Now, we do have this big wipeout on the lows. The response to that is going to be the interesting part. Does it break underneath the low and then pop back up and immediately respond to support again off 43? We know they're just trying to jerk these stops. I got juked on that low just a little bit. Did I get slid? No. That was break even. Okay. So, incredible support. Now, look at this from a different perspective. If you were looking like from the mindset of hedge fund, Goldman Sachs, you know, infinite money hack people that have that ability to do that kind of stuff, right? You can see what they're doing, and that's why I wanted to talk so much through there. I know I love talking, but this is something that you have to kind of build as it's going, because they can't just buy all in one shot. The whole area, the fist fight was all here, and you could see them just jerking back and forth over and over and over and over again. And that fight's still not necessarily won. We've got the trap underneath the lows, but now look at the response back up. So there's so much context that you can derive from what's going on just around a few pieces and candles. When is Coinbase supposed to open? I haven't heard an actual time. Maybe I missed it. Or is it all still just kind of should be around? Oh man, do you buy the ES? I mean, it's so tough. The big problem and the thing that I don't like about the S&P is how much time is left on the 5-minute bar. Obviously, buyers bought below the previous bull bar. That's a given. They also tried buying below the previous bull bar, myself included, although I didn't get a fill. Buyers are underneath those areas, picking them all up. Right, so the fact that that's another one of those zones, definitely buyers will be there. Now, is that the most optimal location? No, it's really far up. I would prefer to see something a little bit further down, you know. But the one big concern that I have is the fact that it's hitting major candle gap objectives. All of them are pretty much done, and we haven't really formed any new ones. And the fact that we're finding a balance here further kind of shows the reason why this is a dangerous area. So if I were going to buy in the S&P now, I would rather buy a deeper pullback. Maybe trigger underneath a bear bar. That would be a little nicer. They've gotten below a bull bar. Can they get below a bear bar? Maybe not. So we have an obvious trap accumulation on the lows. This means that this next leg up is anticipated to be extremely strong and probably very little pullback. So from a scalper's perspective, the objective is to complete this 2-to-1. And that's very likely where this is going to start rushing to. So any narrow pullback, any shallow pullback, any washout pullback, scalpers are going to be all over because this is in pulse mode. A little bit of a dip here underneath 63s. There we go. Buyers have a shot to try to scalp this back to the upside again. Upside objective is to complete the highs back up towards 76.50. $59 still acting as a support zone. $59 still acting as a support zone. Not liking the price action here. I'm going to reduce a little bit in favor of a potential flush a bit lower. Keep the risk a little on the light side in case it does want to blow off. And if it does go screaming higher, we already know the upside objective. All right. Not good enough. I'm out. I'm not going to watch this get bigger and bigger and bigger. That's not the response I wanted. I wanted a lightning bolt out of this, right? I wanted that move up, quick, boom, shoot right back up again. This is not that. It's not. I'm not going to hold on. Give me another reason or something a little better. A nice bull bar back up, but now we've got 959 resistance again. It's still in the way. And the POC is not helping the situation. Now price is underneath it. Thought it was around noon, 10:10 Eastern. Well, we'll see. I guess if it's 10:10, we'll know in a second, huh? Let's get the caffeine going. If you're wrong, you owe me a rain. The jalapeno strawberry. Not sponsored. Bulls trying to get a pump back to the upside again, seeing that inside support leg coming off the 950s. That's a great sign, but still, all of the volume rest at 959. Bitcoin pulling back further. Ethereum also dipping. Well, pulling back further. It's still right around all-time highs, 63. It almost hit 60. Did it hit 65? Oh, man, it missed it by just a little, huh? More bullish continuation. We're back above volume at 959. Watch the small little inside snapback. It didn't look like they were going to get back above, so I think sellers are a bit on the back foot here. Like, wait a minute, what? How? Wait, how? When? Euro session low still acting as resistance. If we look at the volume from just the low, all of the accumulation volume built up a POC at 51.25. It's that slow bolt action. Yeah, exactly. Zeus is taking his time, that's all. He had a couple too many last night. He's got to wake up a bit. So we obviously have that POC cluster on the bigger picture sitting at 59. In the shorter term off of the lows, though, they've built it up at around 51.25, so it's a bit lower. Euro session lows still causing some issues. Coming back to 959, see if they want to defend this or if they want to wait. $9.59 support strikes again. Euro session lows strikes again. Man, what a fist fight. We know the buyers want it, but they are taking their sweet time, that's for sure. Or at least at the moment. If they can't hold on to it, then they're going to have some problems. Bitcoin on that 15-minute is getting wailed on right now. Another strong bear bar in the NASDAQ. Are my charts freezing? Not that I know of. I mean, they are a little bit herky-jerky, that's for sure, but I think that's just the volume coming in more than anything else. Looking at the one nice thing about running the stream, it tells me if I've lost any packets or had any internet connectivity trouble. I haven't. It says excellent connection across the board. I wonder the impact Coinbase IPO will have on crypto in general today. I would assume a big impact. Along with that, don't forget we also have the hard fork for Ethereum. I mean, geez, oh Pete, there's just a lot going on all at once. You know, they couldn't have waited, spaced it out a little bit. So with everything all happening all at the same time, that's going to cause a big impact. Now we've got Ethereum futures on top of it. It's a wild ride. If the Coinbase IPO does cause a big flush, I would be looking for a flush that's bigger than I would expect it to be. You know, double things up. If I were looking for a 5% pullback, I would then be looking for a 10, etc. That way I'm kind of prepared, because you know how those news flushes go on crypto. Yeah, I don't blame you. There's just so many alternatives now to the Bitcoin futures and the crypto futures as a whole. Like Binance, to name one, let alone Femex and all of these other ones that already have it. Like, why trade the futures, you know? Big rejection off of the lows again. Lots of support off those 950s. Resistance at the 960s now. The POC has shifted, only a point, but it has shifted. More bears stepping up to the plate. If the buyers can't take this, I can't imagine them wanting to stay around for too much longer here. It's getting real low. We've already hit a lot of these break-evens before. If it does make a new low, a wedge would look a lot nicer. I tell you though, I cannot believe they haven't shifted the POC with as much support as coming in at 950. $10.30 inventories around the corner. We are also getting close to 10:30, so if you've got any questions or anything like that, feel free to start getting those in. Big bear bar to the downside. Scalpers will be taking that short, and the response to this will be important because it either goes very quickly or it's an immediate failure. This is a retest of the earlier entry point from these longs at the base. Buyers want to see this bounce right back up again. I would prefer to see the 3-press wedge low. So a little bit lower because it's the NASDAQ, and the NASDAQ likes being vindictive. They shifted the POC in the short term as well. 13,963. A lot of volume building down here. Buyers do not want a new low. And sellers don't care. Let's see if they can push it down. Is yesterday's NASDAQ level 893.25 still an area of interest to be watching? It's the NASDAQ previous all-time high, which is used by... Yeah, definitely. The previous all-time highs, like we've seen, historically at least, like we were making mention of yesterday, generally speaking, it seems like the all-time high levels respond for about a week. You know, it looked like it was about 4 to 6 days or so that it spent there before making its mind up. And usually the day of is where it closes. So, you know, if you consider today's or yesterday's closing price 978, normally if the price is going to close on top of that all-time high, which is normally the case, then 893.25, I mean, it missed it, you know, but not by much, I guess. It just, there's a pretty big difference. So that's a strong indication that the next day would be a pullback then, which is what we're seeing right now. We saw that before. We've got that giant bull bar up and then immediate failure on the daily when it breaks all-time highs. Yeah, I would leave that area on there for probably a week or two. Or until if we're not even close to it, then obviously it doesn't matter. Can you go over wedges, presses, etc.? Why is a 3-press wedge significant? Awesome. Yeah, I like it. Great question. So I do have a video in the YouTube library that goes over 3-press wedges and all of that. But as far as why they're important or why I look for them more than anything else, it's more about the psychology of things. Obviously, context. I know. I could say it until I'm blue in the face. Context is everything. But the reason why I like 3-press wedges, put yourself in the perspective of the moves in and of themselves. You've got the first move, right? Okay, maybe that took me by surprise. Maybe I was a bull. You know, well, okay, crap. I wasn't expecting that. Right? So now I have to respond. You've got the response move. Now you've got, not including this one, obviously, that we're starting here. We've got that first drive down. So when we get this move going, what we end up having then is the first drive down, the response, the continuation. Then we have a secondary bounce, right? Now, when we have the secondary bounce off the lows, now we have people who know what's going on, right? They know that this move is starting to downtrend. They know something's wrong because obviously it broke lower and there's conviction. So they'll look to enter in for the final leg. And this is usually the weakest one because everybody's looking to do the same thing. Take profit at the lows. And that's why I love 3-press bottoms, because what ends up happening is everybody does the same thing at the same spot, and it creates a very nice bounce point, again, assuming context is correct. So now stack that on top of being at a major zone of interest on a 15-minute, which is also at the wedge lows on a daily. You can see how potent that can get. That's why I like those. Hey, how's it going? We're a little later in the morning session. We're in training time, so feel free to get those questions in. Not necessarily looking to do a ton. The swing entry that I was looking for earlier this morning, we optimized every ounce of optimization I could, and it still couldn't keep it in for the secondary run. We got the nice 2-to-1 move up, but that was it. Tried getting a secondary continuation, short-lived, jumped out. That was about it. So pretty clean and clear today. It's mostly just a continuation of yesterday's gargantuan rally to the upside off of that nice trap low. Kind of looks reminiscent of what happened the day before, but kind of calm and quiet. They still have not been able to achieve any of those tier 2 targets, right? All of them. They all got missed up here. Couldn't even hit settlement. So those longs might still be in, you know? I mean, it hasn't really broken the lows by much. Maybe it took out some stops. Do you trade only in futures? When we've got the room going, that's kind of the primary focus is on futures. Whatever generally is moving. At the moment, the NASDAQ tends to move the best. But that said, you know, a year ago, it would have been crude oil. 5 years ago, it would have been gold or something else. You know, it's there is a variance when it comes to that. But lately, it's been index markets on the futures. Although we will take a look at stocks, which you can see I've got the IPO for coin waiting in the corner here. We also take a look at crypto and really any chart that people ask me to look at too. So I'm not exclusive to futures, no, but that is kind of the home base, if you will. That 959 volume's a train wreck. But you can tell buyers are just holding on by a thread. Like, no, please, don't break. Yeah, no problem. Looking across the board, I mean, from the bigger perspective on the 15-minute zooming out, we can see what's going on. They missed the highs. They're pulling back. We've got that potential trap underneath the lows. But let's be, you know, let's keep this in perspective, right? From the perspective point of view, the most obvious swing, yes, you've got a lot of them here, but where are the buyers? They're not showing up. If it's going to go lower, the next most obvious point, you've got buyers that just rip the move to the upside. That would be an entry defense leg. You also have the lows of that, which is where a lot of shorts will have gotten trapped in. That would also be a zone of interest. So we've got a little bit further to go until we hit the next zone if it keeps wanting to go further. And if those don't hold, then we've got way the heck down here. We got a pretty wide open space. S&P's just chopping around nasty. Speaking of nasty, gold, we've got that volume build, but so far really hasn't done much. Got the dip down, a lot of volume building on the 732s. I'm curious, we were talking about that broken L1 at the bottom. They're at the top of it right now. Like to the tick, too. So, we can already see there's support coming in at the broken L1. That would mean, or at least give us the idea, that buyers are attempting to buy with stops underneath the lows. Their assumption is that it's not going to break back down again, and it's going to reverse back to the upside. Their case, though, is low probability, meaning that they have to go for high reward in order for traders' math to be profitable. That means that their objectives have to be at 2-to-1, which means that the L4, that's not going to work. L5 looks like it's close. So that would probably be their objective, would be just back above the top. You know, around there. yeah, I know, Hope. I'm there with you. But I mean, we changed the name too, so maybe it threw things off a little bit. I don't know. Euro pulling back, not really much going on from that perspective. Bitcoin, and it's the same thing here on Bitcoin. We've got that big dip. Where are they pulling back to? The most obvious point of interest where buyers are going to accumulate, down at the lows. Why would they buy here? Because their risk is underneath the lows. It's phenomenal risk. They barely have to risk anything. But the reward is way up at the top. The probability is terrible. I mean, the chance that the trade's actually going to work, probably not that great. But are you still long biased on the NASDAQ? Man, this failure underneath 14,000 I think is understandable. Don't get me wrong. I think it's fair. But right now, it looks like this is begging for a value pullback. If we look at previous value pullbacks, the last pullback was a 1.39% pullback. So if we're looking for a value pullback, 1.22, that's at the bottom of the channel. Now, that's awesome because they missed the top of the channel. So the fact that they missed the top of the channel would suggest that they're going to overshoot the lows of the channel, which in this case is actually perfect for what we're looking for, because we want to see this go down 1.39. Where does 1.39 land this thing? I mean, it's like dead nuts on top of it, right there, right at the previous structure, everything. Let me move this over a little bit. So, I mean, yes, I like the long, but not in the short term. In the short term, I'm switching a little bit more to the bear side just because of the weakness. I like the long side in the long term. I just want it deeper. So down in like the 830s, 840s, 850s, down there, that's going to be the zone of interest. That's the value pullback equalization. And typically, if they're going to pull back through that, if you really want the big value, you'll double this up. Remember we were talking about earlier? You double up that 1.39% pullback, and that puts you down at 13,640. And look what that lines up with. How many stops do you want to bet are hovering right there? And how much drool do you think is pouring out of hedge funds' mouths as soon as the market gets close to that? Yes, finally. So if you want value, down here, 13,640. Short-term value, more like the 830s. Oh, no, that's fine. You and I are on the same page. It's all good. It's like a second language for us. I get it. Doesn't bother me. But I do know sometimes you've got to try to be the lawmaker, which is, but no, that's all good. I get it. You know my sense of humor. Let's do final call for questions and we'll wrap it up. Overall, I mean, it's been a pretty straightforward day. We're pulling back. We're getting a nice deep pullback. We're blowing off the lows, which I think we've already seen coming from a century and a half ago. All of these failures over here, I just don't want to short this market. So I'll let it fall without me. That's fine. I'll look for the next place to buy. As far as crypto goes, there are a lot of them that I'm a big fan of. But honestly, underneath the in the video description or whatever on the YouTube side, it covers all of the big ones that I talk about. Those are I always keep that updated with all of the big ones, so they're all down there. But I mean, right now, kind of the buzzword NFTs. So when you start seeing big names pouring into that, like Topps as an example with MLB cards and all of that, I mean, 'tis the future. Money for JPEGs. Who'd have thought? But they're on the blockchain. I mean, don't get me wrong. I know I'm poking fun, but I'm being facetious. I can see a lot of definitive uses. Like if you were getting married, put that on the blockchain, right? Irrefutable. It's been proven. There's your license. You don't have to worry about this stupid piece of paper that you lose because you forgot to put it back in the safe when you pulled it out to file your taxes or some crap. It's something that you can just, there it is. It's on the blockchain. I can definitely see purposes, but like money for JPEGs, I don't know. It seems like a stretch. I'll still jump in because the hype train is strong, but I think the next big one that looks interesting outside of utility coins, which I'm always touting, like Nexo and Crow and obviously Binance, are the NFT side of things on the development and hosting side. So EOS, Engine, Sand, those types of things that are actually really supporting it. Gala is another big one. Those are the ones that I find more interesting right now. Bitbanda? Oh, Bitpanda. Like Bitpanda, the antivirus? Bitpanda? Are we talking the same one? Is crude oil moving? Whoa! Whoa! Hold the phone. No, it's a Bitcoin exchange. Gotcha. Crude oil. Sheesh. The news came out bullish. It came out at negative 5.8. So, I mean, it's as expected. I don't see why this is such a surprise. But this thing is screaming higher right now. Wow. No, it's a Bitcoin exchange. Gotcha. Let me take a look. That chart does look insane, though, doesn't it? I like how their symbol is best. That's cool. Bitpanda. Dot. I don't know. You never know these days. Could be .io. Could be .com. All right, I'll take a look at it. Thank you. Oh, speak of the devil, I just sold the property on Upland. See? It's all over the place. My fingers are fat today. Got the dip, just got the baby exit. It's all good. It happens. That happened to me yesterday too. It's, you know, at the time, a lot of times it'll be a totally logical exit. So, you know, I was talking about this a lot yesterday because that's what was going through my head. Don't beat yourself up too much. It's easy to do, I know, but. That V bottom down there. So you can see, I mean, let's put this into perspective of the NASDAQ before we call it a day. What do you think happened on this big flush, right? We know where all the stops were, and we know how the NASDAQ operates. What does the NASDAQ love doing? It loves taking out stops. Oh, you think you're safe? Oh, isn't that cute? Yeah, go ahead, put your stop at break even. Knock yourself out. Try it. See how well it works. The NASDAQ always comes back and gets them. Well, we just had a big blow off, and if we look at this on the overall drive to the downside, we can see now accumulation volume driving this move on the bottom, and they didn't spend a lot of time there. So this wasn't by any means a small amount of orders that hit down there. That was a gargantuan amount of orders that stopped it. That means that a lot of stops hit, probably stop orders here in the VVP and here, and they all got eaten up right there into the 920s. Vindictive. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. As per the usual, you'll be able to watch this recording back, I think, pretty much instantaneously. You should be able to just back it up if you wanted to watch it now. But outside of that, if I missed any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, jhb@ssftg.com. I'll get you covered from there. Enjoy. I hope you had a great day of trading. Rest up, and we will see you all tomorrow morning, all right? Have a good one. We'll talk to you all later. Thanks.